Welcome to Laurier's Teaching Excellence Conversation Series. I'm Deborah Van Eyneton, Academic Director of Teaching Excellence and Innovation at Wilfrid Laurier University. Today, I'm with Max Gwynn from the Psychology Department, who received the 2024 Sustained Excellence in Teaching Award. Known for his ability to demystify the complexities of statistics and mathematics, Max Gwynn has been instrumental in helping students overcome their anxieties about these subjects, empowering them to excel and embrace challenges with confidence and enthusiasm. Since joining Laurier in 1993, Dr. Gwynn has brought with him a deep passion for psychology and a pedagogical approach that has made learning a transformative experience for countless students. Throughout his career, Max has excelled in large class teaching as well as individual guidance, serving as undergraduate advisor for nearly half his career. Max guides students through their academic and personal journeys with patience, wisdom, and an ever-present sense of humor, and I'm thrilled to be able to talk with him today. So Max, thank you so much for joining me here today. And I know you've wrapped up teaching with your very last course. It was
That's
an
right.
online course in statistics
Yes.
before beginning a well-earned retirement.
Mm.
And so I thought we might start today by talking about what are the most significant changes that you have observed in students over the years, right? So, in terms of what they're able to take on and understand more easily? Do they struggle with different kinds of things now? What are the big changes that you've seen? Because that's a 30-year
Yeah.
wonderful
30 years.
career.
It's a generation of students, a new
It
generation
absolutely
now.
is, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for having me here, by the way. I appreciate that. Yeah, students have changed somewhat. I mean, you hear about these labels, millennials and boomers and X Gen and so on like that. And there are, among every cohort, differences from the previous cohort. Um, in terms of students, I noticed that one thing is that students don't tend to go to class quite as often as students did
Oh,
20 or 30 years
we've
ago.
all noticed that,
Yeah.
haven't we?
And I'm not sure why that's the case.
Yeah.
One thing that may be is that students in this generation, last 5, 10 years, have maybe come to the conclusion that everything that I need to know, I can just look up. It'll be somewhere in the textbook or in
Or
the
it'll be
lecture notes
online.
or online
Yes.
or now through um, generative AI.
Yes.
And so they think, I don't have to be in class because I'll get that material somewhere else. And that's a shame because in every class, every instructor has information, knowledge to pass on to you that isn't going to be in the lecture notes, that isn't in the textbook, or that they're not going to be able to find online. And so I stress to students, it's important to come to class, not just my class, but all your classes, in order to find that extra additional info, additional bonus knowledge that
Yeah.
you'll be getting from the instructor. And so don't just think that if I missed the class, it's okay, I'll look it up online later on. It's not going to work quite as well as hearing it in the class and be able to ask questions about the material in class.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's funny that we are in the position definitely of having to demonstrate the value proposition for coming to class,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
so I have been teaching almost the same amount of time.
Mhm.
And it is odd to be in that position where you actually have to, it's worth your while, please come.
Yeah.
And then it really does force some thinking on your part about, so why is it worthwhile,
Mhm.
right? How do you adapt your methods to this student cohort
Mhm.
that is not sure it's worthwhile coming to class?
Yeah. Well, I mean, um, letting them know in the first class, because most students do attend the first class at least,
Yeah.
letting them
Yeah.
know that there is going to be a benefit to you to come to class, to hear what the instructor has to say that may not be on the slides, may not be in the textbook. And that will be on the exam, because sometimes the bottom line for a student is
Yeah.
this going to be on the
Yes.
exam?
Yeah.
And I let them know that I'll be saying things that aren't on the slides. So don't just sit passively and listen to what I'm saying, but instead take notes, additional notes along with the PowerPoint printouts that you might have, or adding onto your slides on your laptop. Take additional notes, because the information that isn't on the slides, that is emphasized in class, is important stuff. And it is something that you will be expected to know on the exam. And if you want to maximize your grade, if you want to do as well as you can in this course, coming to class is just one easy way of adding that 5 or 10% that you may have missed by not attending the lectures.
So one of my colleagues actually in political science did some uh, calculations to
Mhm.
demonstrate that those
Mhm.
who came to class
Yes,
did get, on average, higher
yes,
grade in the course,
yes,
right? So showing that, it certainly helps to show them that.
right. And we have to also point out that correlation does not mean causation.
Yeah. Yes.
It is a statistics course after
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
The people who are more motivated to do well attend class and study more, make sure they know the material. Well, there's people that may be a little bit less motivated in a topic area, maybe statistics. They may not be as motivated to come to class
Yeah.
and to spend the hours outside of class needed to master the material.
Well, I'm going to get back to the what must be a serious challenge in getting students to get
Mhm.
excited about statistics, but I'll get back to that in a minute. I wanted to, though, take you back and then ask you whether there has been memorable moments in your career that have really molded the passionate teacher that you are.
Mm.
And you're clearly a passionate
Mm.
teacher, because the students that are writing for you in your dossier are just, so so very complimentary of
Mm.
your presence, your energy, your humor,
Mm.
your ability to clarify concepts that they may find challenging.
Mm.
So
Well, those are the sorts of things that I like to bring to class. Um, I can't say that there is any sort of flashbulb memorable
moments where you're like,
event
hey,
that say, "Oh, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my teaching career." Rather, it's a series of small things.
yes.
Hearing from students at the end of a course that that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I was worried about statistics because I'm not good at math, and getting them over that hump, over that what may be a hurdle for them, holding them back from really thinking that they could do well in the course. So I'm hearing from students that they were able to get through the stats course. It wasn't as bad as I thought. Um, and is there any higher praise for a statistics course
No,
than it's not as
it's
bad
not
as
as
I
bad as
thought it
I
was
thought.
going to
Right.
be?
Yeah.
That's high praise for stats.
Yeah.
Realizing that students are aware of these things that they believe might hold them back from doing as well as they can, but that there are ways of getting over that in the class. So realizing that I can motivate them to do well, um, tell them not to worry about any shortness they may feel that they have in their math knowledge, and really getting them to think that, yeah, I can do this, trying to increase their self-efficacy um, with respect to their math ability
So that's
is
really
a big
become your
thing.
focus over time, is
That's right,
motivation
right.
and
And
yeah.
also, early in my teaching career as a graduate student at Carleton University, I realized that it's okay to be kind of quirky, to be a little bit weird in class, to tell a lot of jokes, tell a lot of stories, because I noticed that this is what captured a lot of students' attention. And so instead of them just doodling or nodding off in class, if I can try to um, put kind of some fun into the course, that will keep them engaged. And so even though I started off being kind of quirky, I've
That's
tried to keep
benefited
that.
you.
Yeah, I've kept that throughout the 30 years of teaching, realizing that it can be something that can bring a little bit of fun, lightness, to something that may be otherwise kind of boring material, working with numbers,
You're
statistics.
apparently famous for your dad jokes in class.
Yeah. Well, the dad jokes come up, one, because I'm a dad, and um, my kids will let you know that, yeah,
You use a lot
a
of dad
lot of dad
jokes.
jokes,
Yep.
and they come up in class a lot. And
Yeah.
again, you get a lot of groans, but at least the groans are telling you that people are listening and paying attention to what you're saying. And so you throw them in with the material to lighten it up a bit and keep them engaged.
So you mentioned the privilege of having been able to take courses with Dr. Brian Little
Yeah,
at the undergraduate and graduate level, I
that's
think, at
right.
Carleton.
That's
So
Carlton.
what was it about his teaching that inspired you?
Well, he was a famous instructor at Carleton. All the students loved him. And it was apparent that he had a real passion for teaching and for the subject matter that he was teaching, personality psychology, in terms of the courses that I took with him. And so seeing his passion for the material um, really was inspiring to me
Yeah.
to say, it can be like this. You don't have to be a dry university lecturer, just putting information out there for students to absorb. But the great thing about Dr. Little, who went on to win a 3M teaching fellowship in 1995, I think, was that he would quite often, with his Monty Python-esque humor,
Oh, okay.
tell stories in the class.
Okay, so this was also a good model for you for humor.
Exactly.
Yes,
This,
okay.
this storytelling is something that I
Storytelling,
try to
yes.
keep in my courses, where
Yes.
he would talk about a topic and it would unfold like a story. It would have a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Right.
And the end would quite often tie back to what was introduced right at the beginning. And so if you add something that kind of piques students' interest at the beginning of your story, of your lecture, and then throughout the lecture, they see, that's why this person was talking about that at the beginning. To go through a story with a story arc, I think really helps students to see where you're going to go and how everything was tied together.
Students
And
love stories.
they do
They
love
love
stories.
stories.
Yep. And so he was inspirational that way with his humor, his his use of personal events, telling us about his family and his kids were playing soccer, and somehow getting you interested in that, but tying it back to the course material was something that he would have great segues between these personal stories and how it leads into, how it relates to the material that was going to be discussed in that
And
class.
that's when the light bulbs go off
Yes,
across the
right.
around
Yes.
the lecture hall.
Hmm.
Absolutely. That's
Right.
great.
Hmm.
One of the things that I really enjoyed about your dossier is you were saying, you didn't originally have a teaching philosophy per se.
No.
It was
Hmm.
something that just sort of evolved gradually and sort of realizing this is why I do the things that I do,
Hmm.
right?
Right. Um, when people talk about a teaching dossier or a teaching philosophy, rather, I sometimes say, well, how do you come up with one or two lines that are a teaching philosophy?
That
And
sum up,
yeah, I mean,
your entire approach to
there's no
pedagogy.
unifying theory in
Hmm.
psychology. There's no one big theory that explains everything. Likewise, I can't really come up with a single philosophy about what I think is important in teaching.
Yeah.
But there are so many sub theories in the different discipline areas within psychology, that I may have kind of a mini philosophy for each of those. So when I'm teaching stats, I try to use humor, try to make the material engaging rather than just being a bunch of numbers.
Yeah.
When I'm teaching applied social psychology, I try to show this is how we can use our theory and knowledge and research in psychology to improve people's lives, to show how the theories in psychology can lead to, if not a better world, that's a bit of a lofty goal, at least improving someone's life or trying to address a particular social problem that we have. So the philosophy, if I have any overarching philosophy, it's always teach from the viewpoint of being a student. Try to think about how, not how to get the material out there, what facts you need to present, but rather how, as a student, um, would I be receiving this information? How much, how much is too much? How much is too little? What can I do to pique their interest enough that maybe if they missed something in class, they'll actually be interested in looking it up on their own after
Teaching
class.
the student, not the content,
Right.
right?
And so
Yeah.
I started teaching quite young as a grad student. And so I thought, hey, I'm a student too. And I would tell students, I'm a student as well. I had, 20, 30, 40 different instructors. And I keep in mind what sort of things each instructor did that worked for me and what things kind of just went over my head. And I tried to pick um, the best parts of each instructor that I had had previously to say that I could relate to that. That worked for me. And I tried to scatter that throughout the lectures that I would present in, over the subsequent 30 years teaching.
One of the things that I want to go back to that links to what you just said is that in your dossier, you note the importance of fostering and nurturing students' self-efficacy, right?
Self-efficacy, yeah,
But that's something that to me, I think in a stats class, that's particularly challenging
right.
because they come in thinking they can't do it,
Hmm.
right? And you
Yeah,
have to turn that around to, of course you can do it.
yeah. I mean,
So how do
stats
you do this?
stats is a different type of course than, let's say, introductory psychology. Students come into introductory psychology saying, I'm great with people. I know I can read my friends. I know a lot about this stuff from my everyday life. And so they think, hey, I can do this. I can learn about psychology. But then they come into a stats course. And if I had $1 for every time a student has come to me at the beginning of first class and said, I'm really worried about this course. I'm not good at math. Um, and I
You'd
try
be
to
a millionaire.
dispel that. Yeah, I would have retired years and years ago if I had $1 each time I heard that.
Yeah.
And so what I've got to let them know right from the start is that I know a lot of students go into psychology because they don't like numbers, they don't like math, they want to stay away from the physical sciences, for instance. But you can do math, you can do stats. The things that you need to know at the start of this stats course is how to add, subtract, multiply, divide, square, and square root, and a little bit of algebra formulas. And
That
if
sounds
you
manageable.
if you know that, you've got all the basic tools that you need, all the math tools that you need to be successful in a stats course. We'll be introducing some new mathematical and statistical concepts as we go through the course, but they will always build on simpler material that we've covered in previous classes. So we'll go step by step from, um, x equals mx plus b all the way through to something like a huge formula that has 20 or 5 x's and 9 y's and squares and square roots. You'll be able to get through. As long as you can do basic math, you'll do it. And um, I've heard from students so many times at the end of the course or even after convocation
Yeah.
when I see them with their parents. I was so worried about the math in that course, but it wasn't bad. I got through and I actually enjoyed it. So that's very gratifying to let them know that um, you can master math. You can. And if nothing else, if they don't remember the statistical formulas or how to do a t-test 5 years after they graduate, I'm hoping that they keep in mind that they can competently and confidently work with math, work with numbers. And I'd be grateful if they forget all the stats that they know, but have that increased self-efficacy when it comes to working with numbers.
Yeah, I would say that you do, however, also provide them with lots of support on the basic math. Like I noticed that you've got, if you want to review on this, look at this, and
Mhm.
you've got some videos and you've got some resources, and
Yeah, have
so
lots of
lots
practice
of,
problems,
yeah,
point them out to videos on YouTube.
yeah.
I tell them that we've got some fantastic TAs in the course who are graduate students who themselves have taken an introductory stats course and didn't know any
And got
stats
through
before
it.
and they got through and they
Yes.
excelled in
Yeah.
it. So there are lots of support, lots of resources. Come and ask me if you have questions about something. And if I can't answer it, I'll look it up. I'll find something, some material that will help you get over that hurdle. And it will help me the next time I teach the course to realize what sort of steps you were a little confused on, and we'll get through that. And I'll be mentioning that subsequent classes.
How many students in the class again, around?
It ranges from 150 to 250
Yeah,
students in the class
it's a lot of
for
students.
the stats courses.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a lot. And so I can't learn all of their names, but I do hope to talk to some of them before or after class or during office hours or in the last few years over Zoom during office hours or some other time.
Yeah.
Yep, so big classes, and I try to keep it as personable as I can. Mm.
One of the things that I noticed also in the dossier, as you note, so the department was hoping to move statistics online into an
Mhm.
online format.
Yes.
And initially you were reluctant and thinking,
Yeah.
how is this going to go putting statistics online?
Mhm.
Because I would expect that moving a statistics course, one that has many supportive exercises and resources for the students that you have created,
Mm.
I would think that'd be very challenging. So, just your thoughts on moving
Yep.
a course like this online and keeping it fresh and real. And,
Mhm.
I'm thinking about your dad jokes. Do they translate into online format? Like, how
No.
do you do? Yeah,
No.
no. But
Dad
so,
jokes not
how do
as
you
much
do
because
that?
they're more off the cuff.
Yes.
But for years and years, I was reluctant, although we were moving some courses online in the
Right.
psychology department,
Right.
I was reluctant to do a stats course because I thought this is material that it's really important to have interactions going on,
Yeah.
to have someone there to help them over the problems that they may have, or to get lots of practice because we do a lot of practice in class, learning how to use this formula to arrive at an answer. And so I was reluctant to suggest that we make the stats course an online course. But then two things changed my mind about that. One was the psych department said, we need to have this course online. There's no choice. We're going to do it so that students can do their entire psych degree online. So that kind of got me over the first hurdle. The second was the
Pandemic.
advances that have been made
Yes.
in technology
Yes.
and
Yes.
the way that online courses are delivered over the last 10, even 5 years, going from sending out videotapes of a lecture, of a live lecture, for instance. That's how we used to do distance education. Now it's done online, and there are ways to incorporate great technology using interactive quizzes, using apps and applets, using
Absolutely.
hyperlinks,
Absolutely.
using all of this wonderful wizardry that the tech team here at Laurier, through teaching and learning, they know this stuff so well, and they did
And we
such a
get
good
good
job.
training. We get
Yes,
really good training.
yep.
Yeah.
And so they were really able to create a lot of interactive things that would keep people engaged rather than just reading through stuff and working through
Doing
a few problems.
assignments. Yeah.
They, every, 30, 15, 20 minutes, they have something that they have to do on their own to work their problem or to think about how this relates to something that you've done and write down or you do multiple choice type questions. It's really amazing how the technology can be used to keep them engaged. Um, Not maybe to the same extent that they would in the classroom, but there are students who are, highly motivated to work on their own, to work
Yeah.
independently, and we try to give them all the tools to succeed in order to be able to do that. And so there's a little less off the cuff stuff that I would bring up in class,
Yeah.
but there is more structure to it. And I'm trying to improve that online course term by term as well. And with the help of the tech team and all the resources available, lots of practice problems, I think students are doing pretty well at learning the material.
And you think that you're able to maintain that student-centered approach that you're clearly known for in your
Yeah,
in-person class.
I try to. There's a lot of
Yeah.
quirkiness there. I mention a lot about zombies
Oh,
in class.
zombies and
I'm a
statistics. I
zombie
love it.
fan.
Yes.
Yes. And other things about, again, as Dr. Little kind of demonstrated, trying to write stories into the online
Mhm.
lessons so that they would be able um, to see where we're going and how we get there.
And are you going to continue to teach online?
I may.
I
Haven't
may.
committed to
Okay.
anything yet.
Just thinking about,
Yes.
yes, how you'll want to use your time.
Mm, yes.
um, in thinking about your in-person class, the students coming into lecture, and you've said a number of times now that you're very busy in class. You're constantly practicing, you're doing things, you're applying things.
Mm,
How do you do that in a large lecture? The reason I ask is because this is one of the most significant challenges, I would say, for faculty at Laurier and
mm,
elsewhere, is how to engage your students in large lectures.
mm.
How do you keep them active and engaged? Especially, I was reading a statistic the other day that the average focus time for a post-secondary student is 8 minutes now.
Oh,
This
okay.
is after cell phones and social media and
Yeah.
apps and all of these things. 8 minutes.
Mhm.
So how do you keep them engaged? Especially with the material. Like, what are you doing with them in class?
Well, in the beginning, way back in the previous millennium, when I was first teaching, the classes were smaller.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
you could keep their attention, keep their focus pretty well if there are 30 or 35 students in the class. But now that there are over 100 or 200, it is a little more difficult. And students do have, I find, less of an attention span
Yes.
these days.
Yeah.
They
Well,
may
the
have been
evidence supports that.
they may have been easily distracted
Yep.
way back in the 90s. And when they were, they might doodle or they might write out a shopping list or count the number of dots on the ceiling or something like that. Now they're distracted in different ways. They have
Yeah.
their phone,
Yep.
they have their laptop or
Yep.
tablet in front of them. And so it's very easy for them to take their attention away from the material that's
Absolutely.
being presented. And so by throwing things in there that maybe they're not expecting, by using maybe an off-color joke or story that way. You do this a few times early in the course, and you're hoping that students will say, "Hey, what's he going to do this time? What's he going to be saying that is really quirky or weird that I can talk about later on?" And so letting them know that the something may come up that is going to be of interest to you, even if you're not interested in stats, can help to hold their attention. And as well, being kind of low key. I use a lot of self-deprecating humor, um, a lot of, sometimes I will intentionally make a mistake when I'm doing an equation on the board. And I'd say, is that right? Can anyone tell me if I've made a mistake here?
And do you find that they're like, "This is oh,
Yep,
yeah,
yep. And
yeah,
they do say, yeah, you've used the wrong number there, or you haven't square rooted down there. Um, and then I'm hoping that in subsequent classes, students will be keen to try to be the one that
to
spots
notice."
that error.
Yes,
And so they're saying,
yes.
okay, that's what X is and that's what Y is, and it looks like everything's okay. So trying to have them see that maybe they can see where I've tripped up and um, to
I
realize
love
that
that.
it's okay to make mistakes. Um, as long as you double check your work or you have someone else checking your work, a lot of eyes on your work, that's going to work.
And are they doing actual problems in class, or is that mainly
Yes.
for lab? Because I know you do labs as well.
In the labs, we use statistical software,
Yes.
but in class, we tend to do hand calculations. And
Great.
some other profs who teach stats say hand calculations. Nobody does hand calculations anymore. We have SPSS to do that for us. But right since day one, I've been getting them to do hand calculations to see how they get a numerator for a formula and a denominator and what goes into the top of the fraction, the bottom of the fraction, what it all means. I think you don't get that when you're doing an SPSS analysis. You just get a number at the end. So to see where the numbers are coming from, I think it's important for them to realize what goes into the formulas and to work through the formulas, the equations, right from step one down to the final answer.
It's funny that you say that because you're actually the cutting edge, because what education researchers are saying now, in order to
Mhm.
address the problems with generative AI and what's happening with academic integrity and disengagement and digital distractions in the classroom
Mm,
and trying to keep students focused and engaged, get them to handwrite notes in class, to
Yes.
do exercises in class. So you're cutting edge.
Yep. In the early days,
Old
um,
school is cutting
yeah,
edge now for Macs.
back when we would use overheads, meaning, we would
Yes, I
write on
remember.
plastic and it would
Yes,
be projected
I
up.
used to use
Um,
overheads.
in the early
You're
days,
dating both of us
yep,
right now.
in the early days, I would, instead of producing pre-made overheads that I would flip up and
Mhm.
students would write everything down, I moved to just writing everything on the board or
Yes,
everything on the overhead itself so that students would be able to keep up with the material.
right.
And they would work along with me to write things down as I wrote them
As
down
you're
on the
writing,
board.
yes,
And
and
I knew that
talking.
I was going at the right pace. I wasn't going faster than they would be able to attend to encode as well, and remember later on. And then after a few years, I got to know what pace I could go at,
Yeah,
where I could go quicker and where I could go slower. So I was in the Goldilocks zone in terms of
right,
speed of
right.
material presentation, not too fast, not too slow. And so I would create handouts or in the later years, create PowerPoint slides um, that has a lot of the information so that they don't have to write it down. But I tell them there are blanks, there are spaces on the slides or on the handouts
So
that you actually
fill
have
them
to
in.
fill in
Right.
because the research tells us that when students write something down
Yep.
by hand,
Better retention.
better retention, better
Yep.
encoding,
Yep.
better ability to recall it later on.
Yeah.
So I say, don't just sit there, don't just tape record the lesson, audio record it. Instead, write it down by hand,
Hmm.
and it'll pay off in the long run.
Yeah, for sure.
Hmm.
So when you, alongside all of your teaching, you have also been undergraduate advisor in the department
Yeah,
for 14 years,
14 years.
something
Yeah,
like that.
about half the time I've been here, I've been one.
Undergrad advisor as well. And
Yes,
it's a very complimentary, it's a lot of work, first of all,
it is. Oh,
especially
it's.
in a large, complex, multi-pronged program like psychology.
Mm,
But it also is helpful in terms of giving you a different perspective on the students
mhm,
because you actually see some of their struggles,
right, exactly.
right? That you
Yep,
may not be aware of as the professor at the front of the classroom or during office hours.
that's right.
So
That's
I'm just
true.
your thoughts on
Yeah, I mean,
that.
it's exactly that. As an advisor, you get the opportunity to ask students about their experience. Over the last week, what's gone right for you? What's gone wrong? What are you finding? What are you struggling with
Yeah.
in your program or as a university student? What are you really proud of that you've done in a course so far? And you get that more one-on-one, completely away from course material, but how they're faring as a student, how they're striving as a student.
Yeah.
And so that can help to address our teaching as well.
Absolutely, because you're
Yeah.
thinking, oh, I could be doing
Mhm.
X, Y, or Z in order to
Yes.
support students in these different ways.
Yeah.
Right.
Because as an
Yeah.
instructor, when we're preparing a course or preparing a particular lecture, we tend to treat it as if it's the only thing that the student is going to
Yeah.
hear that
Yeah.
week or this term, whereas they're doing 4 or 5 other courses. And so, um, as an instructor, when we've got to be aware that we've got to keep our course load manageable, our material manageable, not to have too many quizzes, not to have exams the same weeks that they have exams in all their other courses, because you hear from students during academic advising, I had 4 midterms in 2 days, and it was just impossible for me to concentrate
Yeah.
on any of them or to
Yeah.
partition my time that way. So learning what students are liking and disliking within their program and within their classroom really helps as an instructor, but as an academic advisor, it's really helpful. And it's so rewarding as well,
Yeah.
because when you have a large class, you think that you're helping, 200 students at a time learn course material, and you see at the end how well they do on the exam. And if they do well, you're kind of pleased that you were able to do that. As an academic advisor, students may come to you with sometimes small questions. How do I add a minor to my
Yeah.
program?
Yeah.
Or big questions. What can I do with my degree in psychology?
Hmm.
And if you can give them some solutions, some answers, suggestions for that, it really is rewarding because in the course of a day, you may have solved 12 students' problems. And that's 12 humps, 12 hurdles that you've had those students get over. And it's nice to think that you're really helping them on an individual basis and not just helping them in classes of 250 at a time.
You know, I was going to ask you what you think your greatest achievement in your teaching career is, but I think I need to ask you, what do you consider your greatest achievements in your
Yeah.
teaching career? You just were talking about one of your um, achievements is, supporting students in their undergraduate
Mhm.
pathway, right? But,
Yes.
if you think back, what are your greatest achievements?
When I go to convocation, and I try to go to as many convocations
Yeah.
as I can and speak to students afterwards, it's it's gratifying to hear students say, "You really helped me through a time when I was thinking about giving up on university or changing my major to something else because of this one course, this one instructor." And um, it's I find it's an achievement each time that I hear that from a student.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these little achievements, helping them out, um, hearing that a course wasn't as bad as I thought it was, and things like that, I find are those mini achievements that help to keep you going from year to year and class to class.
One of the ways in which I think you've also been really influential is you have that thesis course for fourth year students,
Yes,
but you help them participate in the thesis conference.
yes.
Can you talk just a little bit about that thesis conference? Is that
The
something that's disciplinary or?
Within the psychology department, students who are doing a thesis will, at the end of the year, second to last week of the winter term, present their research findings in a poster conference.
Yeah,
And
wonderful.
this is amazing
And
for
you
students.
organize this.
Well, some years I would.
Yeah.
Other years I teach the fall term of the course and someone else does the winter term
Right.
in which they organize the
Right.
poster
Right.
conference. But over my years, I've organized a lot of these. And it's great that students are able to present their work, present their babies that they've been working on for the
All
last 8 years,
year.
eight,
Yeah.
8 months or full
Yeah.
year, and present it to other students, some of whom may know nothing in the area, and be able to take uh, uh, one small research question and show how they used methodology and statistics and research design to answer that question, to come to a conclusion, and to chip off a little bit of what's not known about psychology
Yeah.
in general.
Yeah.
And so it's very gratifying for students at the end to go through that. And once that conference is over, to see them all kind of say, "Oh, it's done. It was fun. I really enjoyed that." That's really gratifying as well. As well, we've had a couple of Ontario undergraduate thesis conferences where thesis students in psychology from all universities in Ontario would come to Laurier and do the same sort of thing.
That's wonderful.
And so
Yeah.
I've organized a couple of those conferences, and it's terrific. It's a non-judgmental way for students to be able to present their research.
But this must be for some of those students.
Mhm.
Um, First of all, the first time that they formulate a research question, as well as develop the research design, choose a
Mhm.
methodology, do some empirical work, write up your findings, down to doing the graphics on the poster, all of those
Yes.
things. That's
Mhm.
a wonderful culmination of the undergraduate experience.
It is, and it sets them up for
Grad
subsequent
school.
careers,
So you
grad
must hear
school,
from
or
them. You must
yeah,
hear from them going.
yes. I've had many of my undergrad thesis students go on to grad school in psychology or medical school or teachers college or law school, and the information that they gain from doing a thesis really helps them realize how they have to work
Wonderful.
through a project, right from the beginning question until the end result conclusion. And I have to mention among the achievements, if there's one achievement that I'll probably remember for a long time, it's being nominated by my
Yeah.
colleagues in the psych department for the Don Morgenson Award. That is
And
something
it
that's,
was a team nomination.
yes, that's
It
something
was
that was
wonderful.
humbling and very gratifying. I really appreciate that.
So let me pick up on that and ask you, is there any advice you could give to somebody, a new faculty member in psychology,
Mm.
who's starting on their teaching career? What would you say to that person?
Well, if I were to go back in time and speak to
Yeah.
me in
Yes.
1993, I'd say, again, you can do this. It's maybe difficult. There's a lot of material, but you'll get through it in the first year. Um, there are lots of resources to use. There,
Yeah.
you should be speaking to your colleagues in the department about teaching the course. Um, go to the experts. Read as much as you can from learned teachers.
Yeah.
Read books from experienced instructors
Yeah.
to find out some techniques and tactics that you can use in your own course to help students learn.
Come and engage with us at Teaching
That's right.
Excellence and Innovation.
That's right. The university has workshops. They have
Yeah.
um, experts you can consult with, and it's not something that you have to get 100% right the first time. Over the years, each time you teach a course, you'll know what works and what doesn't work,
Yeah.
and you'll be able to add to it. And also, be yourself. Don't force yourself
I
into a
love
role.
that. I love that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Don't try to be someone who gets up there and gives fact after fact after fact. Uh, when I think of my own undergrad and grad courses that I took, my two instructors that stand out most were Dr. Little, who we've
Hmm.
spoken about, and another instructor who was kind of just the facts. And he would be as dry as a desert, but he would present the information
Yeah.
and he did it in a way that worked.
Right.
Um, his style wasn't Hollywood or anything like that. It wasn't totally engaging, but he made sure to present the information in a way that we could understand it.
Yeah.
And he would present it, and at the end of the class and at the end of the term, we would have learned the material. So you don't have to be a Dr. X who is very dry, just presenting the facts. You don't have to be a Dr. Y who is really showy and engaging and is fun to work with, fun in class. You don't have to be one or the other. Do whatever works for you. Because
Embrace your quirkiness.
exactly, students will know if you're putting
Yeah.
on a false front.
Yeah.
And so, although
That's absolutely
you
true.
can take on
Yeah.
a role that may not be your role outside of class, that's fine. Dr. Little showed me that you can be an introvert in a lot of social situations, such as he said he was, and that's why I am as well. I'm quite introverted. But in the classroom, you can take on a persona sometimes that may not be you initially, but that you can develop and that you can use to help to engage students. And you'll see what works and what you feel comfortable with. And, learn from each time you teach a class, you get better and better at your role as instructor and find out what does work and what doesn't work for you and for the students.
So can
Yeah.
I ask you what you're most looking forward to in retirement then? Because here you are waxing poetic about your
Yeah.
teaching.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at the day that I'll be retiring. I'm
Yeah.
not necessarily counting down the days, but it's going to be bittersweet because I'm
Yeah.
really going to miss interacting with my colleagues and teaching classes, being in the classroom especially.
And they'll all miss you, clearly.
Some more than others, but um, I haven't made any big plans for
Yeah.
retirement other than doing those household things that I've been putting off the last 5 years. Saying, I don't have to paint that door now. I can do it once I retire. So there are those chores
Except
that'll
now
take
there's
me,
a list.
yes,
You're
it's going to
gonna
take me quite a while to
make your
scratch
way down
things
the
off
list.
that to-do
Yeah.
list. I'm also looking forward to spending more time with my family. So
Yeah.
I'll have the opportunity to be able to do that. Looking forward to sleeping in a little bit more, staying up late, reading some good books that don't have to do with statistics or psychology, some
Or
trashy
even
novels,
teaching
for instance.
trashy novels,
Yes.
true
Yeah.
crime, etc.
Exactly. Yeah. So looking forward to it, but also I'll be missing the whole classroom experience.
Well, as I said, I'm sure Laurier will be missing you.
Thanks.
Thank
Mm.
you, Max, so much for joining me here today. I've really enjoyed our discussion.
Oh, it's been a joy as well. Great.
Thanks, Max.
Thank you then.
My thanks to Max Gwynn for joining me here today, and I hope you will join me for more conversations that celebrate exceptional teaching practices, explore diverse teaching philosophies, and discuss the future of higher education teaching and learning.